a deal that I'm dealing with right now. All right, Alexa, stop. That Alexa. So, okay. I'm gonna ignore my phone here for a bit. So those of you who already have my phone number, uh, I'm not going to be paying attention to my phone during the presentation. So thanks very much for coming. I see 20 are here. I believe that there's as many as 50 that have signed up. So I will from time to time have to pay attention to that. Uh, Feel free to use the chat box there off to your right, or maybe it's in your lower bar scroll, but use the chat box to ask any questions along the way. I'm going to try to get through. There's an awful lot of data. I sure appreciate you taking the time this morning to join us. If you're a seller, I'm not going to be able to get in 1 hour everything you need to know because it took me 38 years to understand a lot of this stuff. But let's dive right in. I've been doing this for 38 years, and it took me probably 7 years or so to get my footing. And then it probably took another, I was in the business probably 12, 13 years until I really began to think of myself as an expert. It's a learn as you go business, and it's unfortunate that it's a learn as you go business, but I think that that covers a lot of businesses out there. By the way, will somebody type in the chat box and tell me that you are hearing all of this so that I can be certain that we're not still in pause territory
Right.
here?
Yes. Oh,
Can you hear it?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. I'm happy to hear all that. You might want to, I thought that I had muted everybody, but you might want to mute your audio. I don't know if you listened to my radio show this morning, but I was talking about being on a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago, and there was clearly a argument going on in the background about how to clean the kitchen, and that would be entertaining for the rest of us, but you wouldn't want to be in that situation. So um, feel free to use that chat box for anything that you would like. Let's see, I gotta keep admitting people in. So there you go. Oh, that's interesting. The last person who joined, I thought had okay. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've been the top 1% of all realtors for the last 25 years or so. Let me get right into the things that you should know. And I cannot stress this enough. I say it all the time on the show. This is not the real estate that you're accustomed to unless you sold a house in the last 5 years. The internet changed everything. It changed the model. It changed how you roll out the presentation. It changed how you choose when to put your house on the market. And it changed the pricing strategies as you come into the market. Back in the day, we priced high and then moved lower if the market told us to move lower. During those times, it was common to have maybe 40 showings or so until you sold. And it's a pain in the ass every time that you have a showing because you got to clean the house. You have to leave the house. If you have animals, those animals should not be there. Um, it's just that's a pain during the showing period. Showing it 40 times was a real pain. And then what would happen back in the day? After 40 showings, people would switch realtors as if the realtor were the problem. You're getting 40 showings, realtors aren't the problem. The realtor's job is to create as many showings as possible, to bring as many people to the table. It's a partnership when you are selling. It's a partnership between you and that realtor. Your job as the seller is to make certain that the place is sparkling, clean as can be, presentable as could be, that the curb appeal is great, that if you're using a sign, and by the way, you get over $1 million, and I've said this for years. If your house is on the market for more than $1 million, and maybe that's risen to a 1.2 or 1.3 these days, depending upon your location, but you shouldn't have a sign up front. Sign lets everybody know that it's been on the market. And if a sign's up for 2 weeks, I promise you, you will have neighbors that feel like that sign's been up for 2 months. And if somebody ask that neighbor, say, hey, there's a house down the road from you, just a couple doors down the road, been on the market. What can you tell me about it? Oh, that place has been on the market for 3 or 4 months. But actually, it's been on for 2 or 3 weeks. That's just human nature. That sign works against you. All of the ready buyers, it is all but impossible these days to find a ready buyer who is not on the internet day after day, night after night, getting notifications from all the different platforms about the latest listings. The buyers who are buying simply because they saw a sign go up, that used to be when I got into the business, that was 70% of all the buyers. Today, it's maybe 5% of all the buyers. It has changed dramatically. When you come on the market, every ready buyer who's leaning forward, wants to buy something, has likely signed up with realtor.com, zillow.com, homes.com, doesn't matter where it is, for an alert the minute something's listed. And so that also has changed the nature of real estate, I think, for the better. People used to do business with realtors because they had to come into the office and go through the book, find out what really was available out there. That's not part of the deal anymore. And it always, even as a young man, it struck me as a dumb way for you to choose a realtor. You should choose a realtor based on their track record, their negotiating expertise is at the top of the list. A really good negotiator is going to mean a difference of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in deals. It's just, it's the most important thing in it. Now, your realtor better be pretty proficient in a lot of different things, components, architecture, curb appeal. Uh, uh, there are so many different things, surveys, all the legal aspects. You don't want to wander into a situation where you think you sold it, you think that you're out of it, you got the check, but you're leaving liabilities trailing behind you. And that can happen through seller's disclosures. That can happen through fraud. Fraud doesn't have a timeline. You can't run away from fraud. And fraud would be you knew about something, you fixed it, you didn't disclose it, and that problem comes back to haunt you. I have seen a few incidences of that over the years. So anyway, you want to know about that. But when it comes to the sign, that sign works against you. It's great for the realtor. It's great advertising when I have one of my signs up on waterfront listings because people drive along on their way home to their waterfront house. They go past my signs and they go, oh, that guy's something. A couple of people in the industry who put a sign up anywhere they can, and then they put 5 other arrow signs with their name on it because it's good for the realtor, but it is not good for the seller. You need to understand that. You need to be able to control your realtor and their desire to build a career off your listing. That's not what they're there for. You should, if you're thinking about selling, or maybe you're even thinking about selling 2 or 3 years from now, you should hire an inspector to come to your house and tell you all of the little things that any buyer is going to encounter because proactive is way, way cheaper than reactive. I when a buyer walks through, I got a couple listings like this that are about to come on the market here if the weather ever cooperates. Um, I have a couple of different ones where the caulk liner, the drywall has separated a little bit, like a fraction, not something that looks serious. There's no cracks in the drywall. It's just a separation from settling. All houses settle. All houses settle. So you can get that little separation at your roof line, your ceiling line, that you just run a bead of caulk along and it looks beautiful. Or maybe you have crown molding, however you want to dress that up. It looks beautiful. You don't let me put my legal hat on here. When it comes to disclosures, what you want to do in disclosures is you want to tell them everything that you know for absolute certain that is an issue with the function of a house. You don't want to hide anything. But what you really want to do with disclosures is put the onus on the buyer to get their own inspections and to become satisfied with their own inspections. Or if they waive the inspections, and we'll get into that here in a minute. If they waive the inspections, they have a home warranty but you want the buyers to go in eyes wide open. You don't want to cover a situation that you know to be true and you lied about it. That's a terrible spot to put yourself in. Uh, 60 years ago, if you had a basement, yeah, there was going to be water in the basement. It's a basement. Yeah, there's going to be water in the basement. That's not part of the deal anymore. There shouldn't be water in the basement. Those are the advancements in the technology of home building and the components used to build houses. So if there was water in the basement, disclose it, explain how it was cured and how long ago it was cured. So those are those sorts of things. But if you get an inspection first, you're going to really be able to present that house as sweet and neat and tidy. Little things derail deals. A loose handrail going up the stairs can be fixed for $1.25. But when people encounter a loose handrail, they know the roof's about to go. They know the furnace is probably on the fritz. They People can attribute if there was some way to get in people's brains and figure out the exact number. I have seen people who they don't say it out loud, but people can attribute $50,000 worth of value loss because of a loose handrail. I know it's absurd, but I'm telling you in real time, I've seen people walk away from a house that they otherwise were in the beginning process of falling in love with because of a loose handrail, because of little things like that. So, first thing you should do, get an inspection, because then you can use it as part of the marketing tool where you put the inspection on the table and say, hey, we had an inspection done 2 months ago, a month ago, whenever it was. And here are the things that came up in the inspection. Here's what we did to correct them. So it really puts sellers or buyers at ease. You have to pay attention to the marketing and the rollout in particular, the presentation when you're putting it out on the market. For the longest time, when I realized the internet meant everything, probably 15 years or so ago, I'm a busy guy. During the season, from about now, from the middle of April all the way now, our frantic season, last 5 years, extends all the way into the beginning of December. It used to kind of die down middle of October, but I work 7 days a week and I've got tons of stuff going on. So I used to hire out uh, the photography. And I'll bet I went through a 5 year period where I wasn't completely satisfied, but they kind of got the point across. Anything in the listing, anything in the listing is there to draw people's attention to come to the property, come to the house, have a look at it in person, and that's where they fall in love. The presentation, the marketing, the rollout, the pictures, that's the perfume that wafts in the air. That's the invitation to come. And sometimes the invitation not to come, by the way. I'll get to that in a minute. But people still come to the house, and that's where they fall in love. That's where the partnership is. You're trusting that I'm doing everything I can to bring buyers to you, to get the word spread out far and wide in the obvious buyer pool, and then a little bit beyond that as well, because you never know where a buyer is actually going to come from. I'm trusting that you will have the house in tip-top shape and that everything will look beautiful so that they can fall in love when they are there. And then back to me, I help guide people through the falling in love process. It's amazing to me. I've dealt with billionaires who still need the permission to do what they want to do. And I know that sounds silly, and I know it sounds like, oh, come on. People want to hear that they're getting at least a fair deal, if not a good deal. They want to be able to believe that what you're telling them is true. So you always, on my side, you always have to be truthful. The minute you're found out to be shading the truth, even a little on the smallest little item, their confidence in you is gone. They're not going to buy what they wanted to fall in love with. So it's very important that we do this dance together. Your job, have the house, have the property in beautiful, enticing condition. My job is to know how to present that, roll that out. So after 5 years of kind of putting up with the photography, I started taking the pictures myself. Now I don't have a drone. I don't have all the gizmos necessary to really present it well. But what I do have is an eye to present emotional photos. I talk about emotional photos all the time. I'll give you an example of what an emotional photo is. You see my kitchen back here? So I always wanted a 1950s kitchen. I wish the sun wasn't, there is no sun. I wish the light wasn't coming in over the kitchen sink, but that is a 1950s kitchen, right? It does. People walk into my house, and I don't know how many people really would want to buy the house, but people walk in, and when they walk around the corner and see the kitchen for the first time, everybody has the same reaction. Oh, this is cool. This is different. By the way, those counters are Formica. I redid the kitchen, I think 7 years ago. Don't sleep on Formica. I know it's not expensive, and so it's not your granite or your quartz or your siltstone or whatever you have dreamt of. But 7 years later, there's not a scratch in that stuff. There was a reason why Formica was very popular years ago. Anyway, when it comes to, I'll give you an example of emotional photos that I think is a pretty vivid example, and you can understand. If you have a den room in your house, a study, an office, a den, and it has French doors, glass French doors, which is a really nice look. When I take the photo, or when my photographers now take the photo, I want that door half open to both invite you into that room and to let you know that privacy exists were you to close it. I don't want the doors closed. I don't want the doors flung wide open. I want it half open. I want it to be a visual invitation into that room. And I want to be able to convey what that room feels like. The same thing with dining room tables, with every part of your house. There's an emotional shot available, not in every room, but in many of the rooms. There's an emotional way to shoot your deck overlooking the lake, your view from the hilltop, where you sit in the middle of a neighborhood. Emotional photos are what people respond to. There's a lot of people looking at your listing who live in Idaho, who live in Seattle, who live. I have back-to-back stories from 3 years ago now. I hit the list button, sent it to the MLS, and within 10 minutes, and these two examples that happened 2 weeks apart. First one was a call from Antioch, Alaska. I have 8 siblings. One of my brothers spent 43 years living in the bush of Alaska, and Antioch was one of the places he lived. I happened to know that my brother was down here at the time, so I knew it wasn't him calling, but I was really curious. I think I got to answer this phone call. It was from somebody who said, "Hey, I just saw that listing that you posted 10 minutes earlier." He's in the bush of Alaska. He said, "My sister wants to come over. She's going to look at it for me. I know that neighborhood. I grew up in Traverse City." Guy followed through and bought that house. It was just amazing to me how quick the internet worked out. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Thailand. You get a call from Thailand these days, even in those days, uh, you know, probably a scam. I probably shouldn't answer this call, but I've never gotten a call from Thailand before. I got to answer the call. I can hang up, Rick. Answered the call, the very same thing. Hey, my cousin's going to come and look. This was a house over in Slabtown. You just listed this 10 minutes earlier. He's in Thailand. That guy went ahead and bought that house. So the minute you hit send, it's everywhere and it's there for 10 days. Forward-leaning buyers are on it immediately. They're looking, and this is how it has changed my life. I can't sign up on your behalf. If you're a buyer, I can't sign up on all the platforms for the different people who have asked me to look for something for them. Because from the really serious to the mildly curious people who ask me to look for something for them, I probably have 45 people who are looking for something. And if I signed up on the platform to be dinged every time a new listing came on, it would cut my workday in half. Uh, but cut it in half is not the right way to say it. It would take away half of my productive workday because I'd be responding to those dings constantly. You, the buyer, you're just looking for one thing, yourself. You're not looking for 4,500 people. So they sign up for those things. They call me. They say, "Hey, I see a listing." That's changed a whole bunch. I used to have to call you and say, "Hey, there's new property on the market that I think you're going to want to take a look at." If you are not on a platform where you're getting the information immediately, then you don't understand this new market. You don't understand what the internet has done here. And the idea to expect me to be on the lookout for you, I do begin every morning, a cup of coffee, and I scroll through. Oh, there's people waiting to get in. Um, Hello to the people who just joined us. I'm sorry, but I am recording this, so this will be available. So you can catch up later on to what you've missed here so far. We're just going through things that a seller needs to know about.
What platform, real estate platforms, talk about looking for houses.
Uh,
Oh,
so you might
Fine.
want to mute yourself because at least I can hear you. I think probably everyone can. Um, the platform will be on my on jacklaneteam.com. It'll take us probably till Tuesday to get this video up properly on that platform, but that's where it will be. Back to emotional photos. Emotional photos mean everything. That is the difference to somebody in Idaho, in Seattle, in Alaska, in Lansing, in Detroit. When they get that notice that there's a new listing, they click on it immediately, hoping this is the one. And if the emotional photos are there and the pricing is correct, they know in this market, last 5 years, most things have been a bidding war. They know they've got to move quickly. And that's the kind of buyer you want to deal with. The kind of buyer who says, I want to come and see it. They come and see it and go, we're going to be back in the area in 3 months. And my nephew is going to be with me or my uncle or whoever it is. And we might want to take a look again. That's not a serious buyer. Nothing lasts 3 months. It's not true. Either wildly overpriced listings or junk lasts for 3 months. But you want to deal with ready-made buyers right now. Ready-made buyers in our market understand that they have to act quickly. So emotional photos. I cannot say enough about emotional photos. I now have trained a couple of different photographers how I want those photos to be taken. And by the way, I say this on the air, and I know it's humorous, but it's true. I can't tell you how many listings I look at where I can tell you exactly how tall the realtor is because they take photos standing up from how tall they are. If I'm taking, I typically will come and take a couple of emotional photos that I'm not completely certain the photographer will get. I have taken a lot of photos sitting on my butt on the floor because that's the best shot. I've been on my knees because that's the best shot. I have stood up. You see my chairs here. If I thought there was an emotional photo available and I had to stand on that chair, I would do it. There, you get it. I've said enough about emotional photos, but it means everything because even today, there are so few realtors who understand that emotional photos are a huge, let's go see it, let's not go see a demarcation point. Negotiating strategies. We'll get into that a little bit down the line here, but you need to understand a really good realtor has got to be pretty proficient to really proficient in like 35 different avenues. You got to know the legalities. It's a really good idea if you know the tax implications of what you're advising people to do. You have to know components. You have to know about easements, adverse possession, the cures for things that are an issue. What it costs to rewire a room, rewire a floor, rewire a house. You have to understand architecture. You have to understand landscape. You have to understand at least 35 different things. You take off one hat, you put on the other all day long. You have to be proficient. You have to be able to convey this and let people know that you're telling them the truth. I happen to be a storyteller, have been all my life. You can ask my third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade teachers. um, and I find that telling stories of things that have happened to other people or other situations is a really good way to convey to people exactly what's going on in their deal. And you got to know how to get through hoops. You got to know who to call to help you through hoops. I've run into what appears to be a dead end in deals that turns out not to be a dead end if I'm dealing with a realtor who knows how to get their client through hoops. Or I've seen people kill deals because they didn't understand. I'll give you one example of what can kill a deal. And this also is how I show people houses. There was a house over on East Bay, not too far from the high school. At the time, the buyer was a doctor. My client, I was representing the buyer in this. He was a doctor, well-heeled, had the money to buy a waterfront place. His son and my son were good friends. They were sophomores in high school. When I saw this listing come up, I thought, oh, I got to call Dr. So-and-so. He's going to love this house if it's anything what the pictures look like. It was one of those situations where the realtor had to be present the listing realtor had to be present at the showings. And I cannot say this strongly enough. Don't do that. It's like taking your mother to the prom. Yeah, I know she knows what a prom is. I know she's been to proms before. But if you take your date and your mother, it's not going to be the prom experience that you wanted. Don't take your mom to the prom. The listing realtor should not be there. In a good buyer and buyer's agent relationship, I know how to move with my clients. I know how to humor my clients through any rough spot that might come up. I know how to educate my clients. And then I know how to shut up and let the magic happen in a house. So it was one of these cases where the realtor had to be there. And the reason for this, I think, is that because of the commissions that people pay, they're like, if I'm going to pay you that much, then you're going to be there for the showings and you're going to be there to wash my car. And I want a valet service. And I get it. There's a lot of money in commissions. People don't understand that it doesn't all go into the realtor's pocket. It's split up in a wide variety of ways and expensive to be a realtor and all that. But the listing realtor should not be there. I call when I'm the listing realtor, I call anybody who's showing one of my listings and I give them the elevator speech. I tell them what to anticipate, tell them stuff they might not be able to intuit at the spot. And then I throw in a couple of lines that are my own sort of poetry. Because if I'm talking to a realtor who doesn't have poetry or storytelling abilities, I know that they will roll out the lines that I just gave them when they're at the house. So I do the selling behind the scenes, but I don't need to be there because I'm an impediment. And the buyers won't say negative things in front of somebody else. The seller should never be at a showing, but the seller's realtor shouldn't be at the showing either. If there's follow-up questions, then the follow-up questions can be dealt with afterwards, and it's a good sign. But anyway, so I show up to this house. I know my doctor's going to buy this house for a wide variety of reasons. There's a pool. There's a beautiful sandy beach. It's East Bay, and it's right down the road from the high school. So I walk in. I have to say hi to the other realtor. The realtor was off to the side in the kitchen, staying out of our way, but not for long, as you'll hear in this story. I walked in. I greeted my doctor client at the door. I walked in, didn't say a word. I walked right straight to the window, overlooking the pool, overlooking the bay. Not saying a word because the view was saying it all. That doctor was there to fall in love with the house and the property and the setting. My words were not only unnecessary, there was nothing I was going to say that would add to the drama of that view and that setting. So I walked right straight to the front window, big, huge front window. There's the pool. There's the bay. Beautiful sunny day, beach spotless. And I just stood there. Now, there's an interesting thing, but there's a lot of human psychology in being a good salesperson. One of the things is that when I walk someplace without saying anything and look out the window, they walk along with me and stand there and look out the window as well. I don't have to say, hey, why don't we go over the window and look out? Oh, it'd be a silly thing to say. I just walk there. And I could tell by his body language that this was a done deal already. Unless the rest of the house was just a trash heap, this was a done deal. So after a bit of silence, he said, "Oh my God, this is gorgeous." And I said, "Can you imagine your son?" I won't use his name, but can you imagine your son and the crew? Because again, my son was part of the crew. Can you imagine your son and the crew hanging out of this pool? You better be willing to have all the kids over all the time, which of course, most parents, that's music to their ears, right? Because this is going to be delightful. Literally, I almost didn't have to show them the rest of the house. We could have pulled out the contract or written it right on the spot. Except from the kitchen comes the voice of the listing realtor. And he says, Jack, I just want you to know that that spot on the roof, we're going to get that fixed, and there's some leaking from the chimney, and we've spotted where that is, and they're going to replace that. And there's a little issue with, and I was stunned to hear this nonsense. Actually, I'm not in the air. This bullshit coming out of this guy's mouth. I just was stunned. That deal, within 5 minutes, the doctor wanted to get back in the car because he had said no. You don't ever, ever talk function on the first showing. They are there to fall in love with the place. Once they have fallen in love with the place, now inspections, now function becomes something at the second showing, the follow-up questions. But on that first visit to the house, function, nobody has ever bought a house from me. And I've sold 1,800 plus houses, $350 million plus, or a number slightly larger than that these days. But I have never sold a house because there was a new furnace. That is not the deciding factor. I've lost sales because the appliances and the furnace and the systems were in terrible shape. But even then, there's a way to put that deal together too, because if they truly are in terrible shape, seller knows that too, and there should be a meeting point for those things. Don't have the listing agent there. Understand the marketing and what's going on when a seller is coming to see the house for the first time. Every time they take the time to come to a property, before they go in the door, they are hoping that this is the one. Here's our partnership. I've done everything to not only instill that mood in them through the marketing, through the emotional photos, through the interaction prior to getting to that front door, but I also am going to try to preserve that as we walk in and let the magic happen. I swear I'm going to become a barefoot old hippie realtor before I'm through with this, because I can tell you, and looking back over my career, I know it happened. I just didn't know how to say it. People feel a house. They feel a house. There's an energy to a house. They imagine themselves there, but they are feeling a house. And I walked into places where I thought, yeah, this is not going to do it. It took me about 7 years to learn. Don't say that out loud, because maybe it does do it for them. Because I have seen people buy stuff that I would never buy. This right here, my kitchen. There's a lot of people out there go, yeah, that's nice for about 3 hours. I would never buy that. I get it. I understand it. We're all different, but how you approach that is really important. Successful closings. Once you get under contract, and we'll talk about the negotiation that gets us under contract at some point. Once you get under contract, now there are hoops to be jumped through to get to a successful closing. Might deal with your trust, might deal with the financing, certainly could deal with the inspections, might deal with the HOA, the master deed for wherever they're buying. Could be a zoning issue where they're buying. Could be that they have discovered that there is a notorious party house 3 doors down the beach that is rented out all the time. There's a lot of different things that can happen. However, once somebody falls in love with the house, once people say, this appears to be it, this is something that I would love to and cherish this house, and then you encounter problems, that deal should never fall apart. That deal should never fall apart. There is a way through almost every obstacle that might come up if somebody has already fallen in love with it. All right, let me take a quick look. All right, Joe, I'll get to that. And David, yeah, I'll talk about this right now. So he says, hi, we have a person that wants to buy our house. we'd still use a realtor, but what are the pros and cons relating to negotiating the sales price? So I do 2 or 3 of these deals a year, depending upon where the price is and how solid that connection with the person who wants to buy the house. Maybe they're a relative, maybe they're a neighbor, maybe they're just somebody that you work with who heard that you're selling. Um, in 98% of those cases, they don't say it out loud, but they're asking and hoping for the friend discounts. Let's say that your house is, let me make it easy. Let's say your house is worth $1 million. And hey, before you put your house on the market, I'd love to buy it. I'll tell you what, I'll give you $950,000 because you're going to have to pay a $50,000 commission anyway. Well, a couple of things about that. Number one, the money that you're going to save from the commission, they want to put in their pocket, all of it, all $50,000. They're selling it like, well, you wouldn't have to pay a commission. It's a done deal right away. That leaves you, the seller, having to navigate your way through the legalities, the inspections, dealing with this guy back and forth. If obstacles come up, you got to hope that you have the skill set, the experience to get him through, to keep him on track, to get to that sale that puts that 50,000 in his pocket. It's and you're cheating yourself out of, in this market, the possibility of a bidding war. If it's $1 million, the bidding wars that I've been through in the last 5 years, or since COVID, 6 years now, last 6 years, I sell about 40 to 45 units, properties a year. So that's 240, 250, somewhere around there, 250 sales. Of the 250 sales that I've been involved in, if I'm on the listing side, I'm going to guess at this, I don't know the number exactly, but about 75 to 80% of them have been bidding wars. And I'll get into bidding wars in a minute because I'm the guy who brought bidding wars to this market back in 2015. I'll tell you a little bit about that history. But you, with your $1 million house that somebody wants to buy, and the money that you're going to save, you're not going to save, they're going to save, you're cheating yourself out of the potential for a bidding war. At $1 million, if it is a highly coveted, and there's a little bit of luck involved in this, I'm not going to pretend that the realtor controls everything. When you put something out of the market, you don't know the neighbors in particular situation. You might know the couple of people immediately next to you, but there might be some guy sold one this past year for 2.7 million because his father lived 4 or 5 houses down the beach, and his father was aging. And this guy had deep, deep pockets. And this enabled him to buy a summer place of his own, 4 or 5 houses away from grandpa, so that there was a little bit of space, a little bit of privacy, but he was close enough to be able to walk down the beach, have dinner with his aging father. So you don't know what that's. We lucked into a situation where that was it. So if you get really lucky, now the idea is, how do you maximize this? While keeping it a feel-good story, how do you maximize it? If you're a seller, almost every seller in the world wants to maximize their sale price, obviously. So there's a little bit of luck involved, but how you roll that out is so important. If you're going to cheat yourself out of a bidding war at $1 million, if it gets crazy, you might get 1.25. So now the friend, and this is if the friend wants to pay the full price. Most times they want the friend discount. It's no different than if somebody knocked on my door right now, who I really like, is absolutely a friend of mine. I said, "Hey Jack, can you give me $50,000?" And I would say, "Why?" "Well, because we're friends." "Anything else? You want me just to give you 50,000 because we're friends?" I mean, if there's a tragedy involved, there's some sort of charity involved, but no, it's just because we're friends. It's an absurd request, right? We can all see how absurd that is. 98% of the time, that's what that situation is when somebody wants to buy. However, if you want to walk through, if it's probably $400,000 or less. I will put, if you've got a buyer and it's a for real buyer and I don't have to do a whole lot of selling to them, I still have to walk that buyer through things. I still have to walk you, the seller, through things. If it's $400,000 or less, I charge 3%. If it's $400,000 or more, I charge 2% to put that together. But let me caution you. If you are bringing to me a list of 7 people who've said that over the years, that's an entirely different situation. So you still want to know, you want to know that you're getting the best price that you possibly could get. You want to know that legally, when you sell, you are out of it. My God, I can't believe how quickly the time runs here. My point behind the seminar is when you understand the process, you're going to be able to make better decisions. And I'm going to try to take you through the process. We've talked about how the internet changed everything. The difference between an order taker and a realtor with expertise can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've told this. I'll give you 2 examples of it. I don't even want to tell you what county this is in because I feel bad for the young lady who's no longer in real estate, by the way. This is maybe 5 years ago, and it was a beautiful piece of property, included a horse barn, stalls, fenced pasture area, perfect for horses. It involved a lot of acreage as well. The realtor, who I had never heard of when this was put on the market, put it on the market for 1.7 million. And when I saw it, I thought, oh God, this has got to be worth 1.7 million. Then I looked at the photos. The photos were atrocious. They just were terrible. And by the way, people need to see maybe one shot of your bathroom if it's a beautiful master bathroom. We are allowed to put 95 photos into our listings. It sure doesn't mean that you have to use 95 photos. Again, the marketing is to entice people to come to the house. If there are 30 wonderful things about your house and 8 of them are enticing enough to get people to come, they come hoping this is the house they walk in and they find not only 8 things that encourage them to come, they find the other 22 things that are also wonderful about the house. That's called underselling, and it's a fabulous way to go about it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of realtors out there who use all 95 photos no matter what. And in those 95 photos are 9 different shots of a toilet. It's absurd. It's absurd, but it happens. There are people, it takes 5 days to get your real estate license in this state. It's criminal that that's all it takes. 5 days to get your real estate license and a D- or better on the test. Would you, if that were the criteria for a cardiologist, is that the cardiologist you want to use? Is that the accountant you want to use? I'm not even certain that's the barista I want to use. But realtors do that. And this was a prime example. This was a poor girl who had gotten her license, and this was her uncle's property. So when I saw the elements of the listing, I thought, yeah, this is worth 1.7. I have to look into this. The photos were terrible. Her description was, she had an apologetic description in the words she chose to use. Make a long story short, they ended up selling that 2 years later for, I think it was just under 1.3 million. They should have gotten 1.7. Properly handled, they might have gotten a bidding war, maybe. Big acreage parcels, there's not that huge a buyer pool for it. But regardless, they should have gotten 1.7. Her listing the property because she was the niece and the uncle felt compelled to use her, I think cost them $400,000 easily. So order takers are people who don't have the art of selling, who can't have tough conversations. I have to have tough conversations with sellers and with buyers. Sellers, of course, want the moon, and I get it. I understand it. I've been a seller. Buyers want to buy for 80% of the asking price. One of my favorite things to say in bidding wars, and this has been fun for me to discover how to say this, if a properly priced waterfront house comes on the market at 1.2 million, and it's properly priced, it clearly is worth 1.2 million. In this environment, for the last 6 years, that's going to be a bidding war situation. And if it's 1.2 properly priced, it's probably going to sell for close to 1.4. I have had buyers who they come, it's 1.2. Well, I'd like to make an offer for 1.15. 1.15 is not going to get it. I mean, you came to me for expertise. I have asked all the questions. I'm in touch with the listing realtor. There's 8 other offers on the table. I can tell you it's going for more than 1.2. Reluctantly, they say to me, after perseverating for a few hours, all right, we'll give them 1.2. I like to say, you've hired me for my expertise. I am trying to get the best result possible for you. So I got to ask this question because I need to know exactly where you are on this. Are we trying to come in 4th or 5th? Because that's what they're doing to themselves. And if you can make people laugh and educate them at the same time, it works wonders. On the bidding war side, I have said this for years since it started, throw a knockout punch. If the asking price is 1.2 and there are 8 other offers on the table, don't be afraid to be the person who offers 1.35. And if you know, and by the way, this is very important for sellers to understand. There was a California case from over 20 years ago where it was a bidding war. The reason I brought bidding wars to this market was because a friend of mine owned a gorgeous place on top of Russian Hill in San Francisco. And so I began to pay attention to the real estate market out there when he was buying way back in the 90s. And I was just fascinated by for years in San Francisco and various other places around the country, but they always set up listings for a bidding war. If they thought this is way back in the day, if they thought the property was worth 700,000, they would price it at 650, knowing clearly that it was worth 700, because they knew the market would bid it way beyond there because there was that much demand. In the 90s, there was not enough demand in our market to be sure that a bidding war would happen. There is now. Everybody in the world, from climate immigrants to retirees to the next generation who has inherited wealth, there is unbelievable demand for our area, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm sorry to say that, but I'm also, I'm here to tell you the truth. The demand is not going away. It's tempered down now a little bit, but it's not going to go away. So, oh shoot. Anyway, get yourself in a bidding war situation. If you are a buyer in a bidding war situation, don't be afraid to throw the knockout punch. If I know, I was talking about the California case. The California case was this. A loser in the bidding war sued the listing agent, his agent, and the seller because the listing agent had disclosed to all other 8 offers on the table exactly what everybody's offer was. And when I read this in the 90s, or when the case came out in the early 2000s, when I read this, I was fascinated. I thought, ooh, maybe there's something to that, because it sounds sleazy, doesn't it? Where you put in an offer and then the other 8 offers that are competing with you gets to know exactly what your offer was. The first time you hear it, it sounds sleazy. Then you think your way through it, and the transparency of it actually turns out to be really good for everybody involved. So I also led in transparency, and I got a lot of blowback from realtors like, you can't do that. You can't tell other people what my person's offer is. I can. I'm the listing agent. I do have to have the seller's permission to do this, but the courts held that the only result by disclosing everybody's offer is that the seller would get the best deal possible, which is what the listing agent's job is. So the courts have held that not only can you should, if you're a good listing agent, you should tell everybody what the offer is. I've had so many conversations with people. It's like a somewhat slow motion bidding war, like an auction, where I tell people we got to have all the offers in by noon on Saturday. And starting, earlier in the week, but certainly in the last 2 hours are very heated as those offers come rolling in. And people call me, realtors call me, hey, what's going on here? Well, here's what's going on. We got an offer for 1.3 million. And I'm told that there's another offer that's going to be more than that. Don't have it in hand yet. My job is to be as honest as I can, because I need to have a stellar reputation, not just with the general market. I need to have a stellar reputation with my other realtor peers, because if they think I'm shading the truth or leading them astray, because they're going to take my words and report that as truth to their client. If I'm found out to be a liar, my career is shot. There are a couple, if you tune into that last show of mine on the radio show, which maybe is 5 years from now, I don't know, I might go beyond that, but I said that I would name names when I have the car all juiced up and ready to beat the lawyers out of town. There are a few people who do that in this business, and they're all known to all the rest of us. And so we have to adjust to those situations. But you should, as a listing realtor, tell everybody. I've had conversations right down to the wire. There's a fellow who I have remained in touch with on Elk Lake who was not happy to hear that we were asking 1.1 million. Oh, I shouldn't. I'm not going to tell you where we ended up, but we ended up way above 1.1 million. And literally, he had about 30 seconds to respond because we were going back and forth. He and another person kept bidding higher and higher, and he didn't know whether or not he'd make the jump. And then finally he said, all right, okay, all right. I'm the fool who's going to pay that price. And he paid a significantly higher price. Now, that was 6 years ago. And his place now is probably worth $500,000 more than he paid 6 years ago. So it works out. You are raising the bar with a knockout punch. But if you can get separation, let's say there's 8 offers in, 1.2 was the asking price. Those 8 offers range between, there are going to be some idiots out there bidding less than asking price. There's going to be others who are bidding the full asking price. And then let's say that there's a couple at 1.3, 1.31, 1.32. Don't be afraid to offer 1.4 million, because that's enough separation for the seller. You're the buyer now. For the seller to say, that's as good as we're possibly going to get. Let's turn off the bidding war. I will accept this offer. I call it the knockout punch, and it worked. For everybody who paid 1.4 for a property that they kind of thought was worth 1.2, those properties now, we went through 18% appreciation in the COVID year, 18% the following year, 12% the year after that, 11% the year after that, 8%. Past year was 5%. So far this year is running along at about 5% so far, but it's really early in the season. Phew. It cures itself rising up. Now, I know that there are people who have gone out, oh, this is bullshit. He's not accounting for what happens when prices roll back. I remember when prices rolled back between 2008, 2012. I had people who bought at the very last wrong moment in August of 2008 before the financial crisis hit the fan. And they paid $550,000 for a house. And come 2011, that $550,000 house was now worth $350,000 if they were lucky. Today, that same house probably tipping out at about 9.25 to 950. It works out. Even if there's an economic downturn, you're going to do better in real estate than you are in the equity market. So it works out. Just know how to play the game. All right, so expertise matters. The winning strategy, let me tell you how you get a bidding war going. Because, man, this time is clicking by, and I promise that I'll be done here soon enough. Here's how you create a bidding war. You put the sign up, if you're going to use a sign, you put it in the internet on a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday, but a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Not Sunday or Monday, not Thursday or Friday. Tuesday or a Wednesday, you put it out there. The minute you put it out on the MLS, it is all over the world. And forward-looking buyers see it and their eyes light up. You've got the emotional photos. It's photographed beautifully. You've got the presentation rolled out beautifully. You've got it priced correctly. If you think it's worth 1.2 million, price it at $1,195,000, just a shade under, so that when people are out there looking and they've looked at all sorts of other stuff, they look and they go, "Oh my God, this is a good price. We got to go see this. Look at that beach. Look at that deck. Look at that sunset. Look at that sunrise. Whatever it is, we got to go see this." So you put it on the market on Tuesday or Wednesday, but you don't allow any showings until Saturday. Why? Because I want there to be a frenzy and I want people to begin salivating on Tuesday or Wednesday. And they can't wait to get there. And here's what they're thinking on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and on their way there. Oh God, all sorts of other people know about this. If it's as good as it looks, then we got to move quickly. And they show up and it is as good as they look. And of the 30 wonderful things, I only described 8. There's 22 more things that they fall in love with. Now they're totally hooked. And now you also explain to them showings begin on Saturday. You can either ask for all offers to be in on Monday, or if it's a really high priced property, say it's I don't know what the line in the sand is, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. You would extend it through so you have 2 weekends of showings, and then you say we'd like to see offers by 5 o'clock the following Sunday, and we're not going to respond to offers the following until 5 o'clock the following Sunday. Again, when I tell the market and when I tell other realtors, here are the rules, I've got to follow those rules. By the way, my clients don't get to see it till Saturday either. A lot of people call me, hey, Jack, we're past clients, we're friends, we're buddies, whatever it is. Got to get in and see that house on Thursday or Friday. And they'll say things, well, I'm going to be out of town. Well, nobody gets in until Saturday because I've given my word on this. And people watch people come and go from houses. And when I've given my word, my word's my word. And if you're going to be out of town that weekend, I'm sorry about that. We'll have to catch the next one. It's amazing how their schedule can change if they really want to see that house. So I too have to follow the rules that you set there. There are people who come along. Let's say it's one of those cases where it's a high-end listing, and we're going to run it for 2 weekends and then ask for offers on that following Sunday. There are people who come along that first Saturday and they go, oh my God, we love this house. You're asking 1.5 for this house. I got a guy who'll give you 1.7 right now. 1.7 right now. There are 2 things. One is I do have to tell my seller that we have been promised a $1.7 million offer. And there's a lot of sellers out there who will say, well, that sounds perfect, but here's what I then follow up with, because here's the God's honest truth. If he's willing to offer 1.7 right out of the gate on the first day, 8 days before offers are coming in, he's doing it because he wants to shut off the bidding war. That guy who offered 1.7 on the first day doesn't want to wait the 8 days, will still be willing to pay at least 1.7 on the 8th day. So I know that there's somebody watching right now. Well, that's bullshit. I'd walk. If you're the sort of person, I'll give you 1.7 today, but not tomorrow. It's a red flag to be sure. There's probably other things along the way between under contract and actually getting to the closing table that person's going to get a little pushy with. So in real life, if they're willing to offer 1.7 on day 1, they are still going to be willing to offer 1.7 on day 8. It is a false concept that this is a one-time only offer. That's not how real estate works. That's not how human psychology works when they have found something that they really like. So you Tuesday or Wednesday put it on the market. Nobody gets to see it till Saturday. And at first, when I started doing this 2015, 16, way before COVID created all the demand, all the climate immigrants and things came our way, realtors would push back. That's unfair. That's bullshit. I'm not doing that. You're wrong. I'm going to take you to the board and say, I'm working for the seller. Here is our program. I can assure you, my clients don't get to see it either. There's nothing slimy going on. This is how we want to market it. Now, a whole bunch of realtors listen to the radio show, and we've done this over the years. And so now it's fairly commonplace to see exactly that format rolled out. But it is how you create a bidding war. You get a frenzy going, people got to see it. They absolutely got to have it. You presented it really well marketing wise. That's how real estate rolls out. Now, the part about total transparency is probably new to a bunch of you. I don't go into it a lot on the radio show. I've mentioned it on the radio show before, but I don't go into it deeply. That's probably new to you, but that's a really important part of the process too. because this is where you get the best deal possible for the seller. The best deal possible, by the way, isn't always price. Sometimes it's terms and conditions. For instance, we put the property on the market in July because sellers want certainty. Sellers are convinced that that's the best time to sell it. In some cases, they're not wrong, but they really, really, the reason they're selling is that they're 85 years old. And it's been 7 or 8 years now since all the kids came, because all the kids and the grandkids are in summer camps and have busy lives. And they've been talking about selling, but they're 85 now. And now this is the year they're going to sell. Boy, we sure would love it if we could stay here till October 1st. Sometimes it is the terms, and possession's a big part of the terms. Sometimes it's because you cannot violate fair housing. There are 6 categories of people who you cannot discriminate against. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into legal trouble. You can, however, if you're not discriminating against one of those protected groups and you're just choosing among 8 different potential buyers, you can sell to somebody's niece or nephew or aunt or cousin or brother from down the way who you're really close to. And you know what? They came close enough and you want to do that. Sometimes that's what it is in the decision-making process. But that's how you create a bidding war. It's really important how you administer the bidding war. You can take the bidding war on too long. You can go back and forth through maybe 2 rounds of negotiation. Once in a blue moon, if everything's right in the situation, and I am constantly in contact with either the listing realtor or typically I'm the listing realtor with the buyer's realtor. And if everything's right, you maybe can extend it to a 3rd round of bids. But every time you go back and say, hey, we've got a lot of offers that are fairly similar. We want your highest and best offer tomorrow. If you are saying that to 5 different people, we want your highest and best offer on the table by noon tomorrow. Typically, 2 of them are going to drop out at that point. And if you've got only 2 people left and you keep going back, you can get to the point where people will say, I'm out of this. And once the other person, you still have to be transparent. You still have to be honest and ethical all the way through. Once the other person realizes that he's the only one left standing, he becomes a different sort of buyer. Or in some cases, both of them come to that same conclusion, and now you're back on the market. But if you go back on the market, and this is a very important thing for sellers to understand, because there's also a little bit of luck involved in this, but with the proper questions and the proper vetting, you can eliminate some of the bad luck. If you go under contract, let's say that you're asking 1.5 million. Let's say somebody comes along and says, I'll give you 1.7 million. You accept that. They drag you out for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whether it's inspections or financing or some excuse after the other that sounds somewhat legitimate. But then 1 month later, say, yeah, I'm out of the deal. They walk away with their earnest money intact, possibly. They walk away, you're back, and the market knew that you're asking 1.5 and that deal fell apart. You're probably going to end up selling for 1.35 or 1.4. You're going to be damaged by allowing yourself to be dragged along for a month. And now you're back on the market. And to the rest of the market, it looks like you've been on the market for 5 weeks, way beyond your 10-day golden period. It's going to hurt you. So you have to do everything within your capability to make certain that somebody's not going to drag you along. What am I talking about? Keep the inspection period short. 7 days, 7 days is sufficient in most cases. During the height of the frenzy, when everything in the world was selling, it was hard to get an inspector booked within 7 days. I could do it because I've got a couple of different inspectors that I'm their star pupil. No, that's not the way to say it, but you get what I'm saying. And so they will work Saturdays or Sundays for me. But 7 days is sufficient. You want that inspection period to be short. I need to hear yes or no, you're going to do this or you're not going to do it. Because in our contracts, it's very buyer friendly, our contracts, our purchase agreements all throughout the state of Michigan, very buyer friendly. Buyers can walk for any reason. And if a buyer walks, it's going to damage you financially. So you need to ask all the questions so you can smell whether or not a buyer might walk. And if you do get the idea that a buyer might walk, here's a very, very important thing that I still don't see enough realtors do. There's a couple other people who were coming late, very late. A very, very crucial thing in negotiating. Get as much earnest money as you can. Once the inspections are through, now that earnest money is quite likely on the line. And the higher the earnest money, the less chance that buyer is going to walk away. There are buyers, and there are still realtors who accept it, who want to buy a $1.5 million place, and they put $10,000 earnest money down. And here's the reality. If a place comes on the market the next day, or 3 days later, while they're in their inspection period and can walk for whatever reason, or maybe they're even outside their inspection period, and they determine that new property that came on the market is a much better buy than your house, like maybe a $70,000 better buy, they'll walk away from the 10,000. And they will damage you in the process because they kept you off the market. You have to go in with the eyes wide open. You have to negotiate as well as you can. Look for the red flags, limit their ability to walk out the door, and all throughout the process, as transparent and as ethical as you can be. All right, we've taken up an hour. There's all sorts of other stuff to talk about, but I want to take your questions. I don't want to leave people hanging here. So you can unmute yourself now. I'll do that same thing. And if you have a question, raise your hand, or it would be helpful if you type your question into the chat box so I can talk with everybody. So I answered the first question, I believe. Oh, there's a lot of. Oh, I see it goes the other way. Sorry about that. Let me start from the top. All right. The fella who, how does the seller know just what to update in their home before selling? That's where, oh, I'm glad you asked that question because I forgot to mention this. I charge a fee to come to your house and tell you I shouldn't use the word exactly because that's not true. Tell you what the price, what the market value of your house is. It's not exact because selling is not an exact science. Depends upon some of the conditions, but give you a straight, gut level, truthful answer. You can get an appraisal done. Appraisal is going to run you $500 or $600. I charge $400 for this. Appraiser's not going to come in and tell you, you know what? Here's what you need to do. You need to paint this room. You need to replace this carpet. You need to restage what's going on here. I can tell you those things. I don't really want to work for $400 a deal. It's how I make money is a whole different thing, but it's a fair deal. If you're not obligated to me, you don't have to use me. You can use the expertise. From my standpoint, you paid me for my time. We're square. In return, I get to tell you the gut level, honest truth instead of fluffy numbers. Because if you ask 3 realtors, like the book used to say, invite 3 realtors over. Here's why you don't want to do that. Particularly if you're inviting 3 of the best realtors in town over to your house. You're going to say no to 2 of them. So you're going to start off your listing pissing off 2 of the best realtors in town. That's not a really solid strategy. But we also know as realtors that the person who tells you the fluffiest number, fluffy numbers are hard to say no to. We know in the industry that let's say the place was worth 1.3 million, and somebody says, I think I get 1.6 million for you. We know market data. We know what's going on in the market. There's probably 25 pretty good realtors in this market. There's over 1,000 realtors, so and they're wonderful people. I'm not besmirching who they are as people. 5 days to get your license, D- or better on the test. It's a learn as you go business. So we know that it's worth 1.3 million. The person tells you 1.6. They've got a track record. They're pretty successful. They're gonna if they're good at what they do, they're gonna explain to you how they arrived at that figure. But you don't know, as somebody who sells a house once every 10 years, once every 15 years, you don't know the authenticity of that data. You don't know there's all sorts of statistics that can lie to you. So it's a really poor way to go about getting the correct price for your house. And the other thing that I think is within about 10 seconds of meeting somebody, you know if they're a me person or an us person. So that's a big part of it too. I think people know when they're being lied to or bullshit presented. So um, be careful about that. If you hire an appraiser can only look backwards. And if appraiser doesn't understand the feel of the market right now. For instance, right now, April 4th, this is a cautious market so far. There's a lot of demand. There is stuff going under contract in certain price groups. If you own a waterfront house, don't put it on the market right now. There is no advantage to being the first uh, uh, thing on the market. There's a huge disadvantage to it because you're burning up 10 days with gray weather and mid 30s temperatures. That's silly and foolish to do that. There is no advantage to being the first person on the market. But um, if you use an appraiser, he looks backwards or she looks backwards. They don't have the current market appetite. They can't see the future or even address it. That's not what appraisers do. And they can't tell you what you need to do. So if you can get on my schedule, I charge $400. And if you do end up listing your house with me, I do give you the $400 back closing. If you don't, hey, you paid me for my time, we're square. So that's what I would do. Call somebody that knows what they're doing, and you get on my schedule. My schedule's pretty wide open still. It gets a little tougher once we get into May and the blossoms and all the rest of that. All right. So back to David's question about what are the pros and cons relating to negotiating the sales price. Here, let me tell you just one thing about negotiating. And there's a lot to know about negotiating. But let me tell you one thing about negotiating that I don't think people understand. And it will strike you as, well, that's odd. And then when you think about it, you go, well, I get it. You put your house out on the market uh, for, let's say, $800,000. Somebody comes along and says, I'll give you $780,000 and I'll close in a week. Most sellers, this is the first person who came along. Most sellers say, you know what? I can live with that because they're used to the last time they sold a house was 20 years ago, and that's how the market ran. You sell for 95% of the asking price, 95% of 8% actually would be $760,000. So at $780,000, yeah, I'm ahead of the game. Yeah, I'll do that. Here's why, if I'm your realtor, you're going to hear me say, no, no, let's counter at 795 or counter at full price, 800,000. And here's why. And it's a psychological thing that absolutely exists. If you say yes to his $780,000 offer, that buyer will know that, damn it, I bet I could have bought that for $755,000. I started too high. He said yes right away. In so many cases, you need to make a buyer pay more to feel like they got a good deal. So let's say that
Sure.
you counter at $790,000 and the buyer goes, all right, I whittled them down 10 grand. I did good. Plus, somehow magically, I was at the front of the line and I got the house that I really wanted. Plus, I got it for $10,000 off. You just made him pay $10,000 more than you were happy to take, but you also cemented him into the deal where he feels good about it now. And when he does his inspections, he's going to remember that he got $10,000 off, and he's going to overlook a lot of the little stuff. If you had said yes to the 780, he knows that he could have bought it for 755, and in the inspections, he's going to come back and try to get it as close to 755 as he can. I know it's a counterintuitive thing, but it's a very important part of negotiating. So that first offer, if it's not full price or if it's not something that just bowls you over, then the correct answer is no. You often have to make somebody pay more to feel like they've got a good deal. All right. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. All right, we have a basement with 3 rooms, a 3/4 bathroom, and laundry room, all carpeted. I hope you don't mean the laundry room, the bathroom are carpeted. That's terrible. Windows are original 1914 vintage. In general, is the cost of new windows and one access window worth the investment? No. You're describing a house that the windows aren't the only thing here, right? If everything else is updated, and by the way, when I got into the business 38 years ago, I would say that about, if there were an average, I would say about 80% of the house was carpet 38 years ago, almost 40 years ago. Today, most houses, maybe 20% of the house is carpet, maybe 30% in some cases, maybe 50% in some cases, but nowhere near what it was. People love hard surfaces. The laminate flooring that looks like wood, I have to these days I got to get down on my hands and knees and knock on the product to figure out if it really is wood or not. I hated Pergo when it came out, hated Pergo, because not only could you see that it was fake, when you walked on it, it felt terrible. If you're a Pergo salesman, I'm sorry. I guess I legally have to say that's solely my opinion, but I hated it. These days, all those products have gotten really good, but people love hard surfaces. People love wood floors. People love, you see the black and white tile that I have in my kitchen here. People love stuff like that. Carpet is not a great choice anymore. In the bedrooms, I get it. In the living room, yeah, I get it. But it stains, it gets old, it smells. There's a lot of bad things about carpet. If the rest of the house is also of a 1914 sort of vintage and isn't totally dressed up, then I would say no. Windows are expensive. Windows are stunningly expensive. Just if I turn this around, I have plantation shutters and my house is from 1894. Plantation shutters. I was stunned. And I'd been in the business when I put those in. I'd been in the business for like 20 years. When they gave me the quote just for the shutters for the windows. So no, windows are not one of those 100% payback things. If you've got bad carpet, that is, I'll tell you where the big money is on return on your investment is in outdoor features. And I love pointing this out to my friends. In the 1980s, if you went to a restaurant and they said, listen, we're really full, we're going to have to seat you outside, there might have been a fist fight at the hostess station. What do you mean seat me outside? What do you mean you're going to put me outside? Like where? The parking lot? Now we feel cheated if we don't get to sit outside. Society changes. Our outdoor spaces are so much more detailed than they were years ago. Our outdoor spaces are probably our favorite part of the house during the 4 or 5 or sometimes 6 warm weather months. So outdoors, landscaping outdoors, patios, decks, garden areas, outdoor features. That's
Yeah.
where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. There are, if you email me, I'll send you a list of bang for your buck in terms of if you spend this, you'll get this. One thing that breaks my heart to say this, but it's absolutely true. You putting in a new furnace or you putting in a new hot water heater will return maybe 50% of what you just spent. I know it's important to you. It is not part of the love affair and the romance for which buyers buy. And you would think that it should be, but just think in terms of function versus romance. Romance wins in the real estate market. Once we own it, then we all pay really close attention to function.
Sure.
But we do not pay attention. We don't buy things because of function. And it does break my heart when I have to tell people that because they say, hey, I just bought a new furnace and I want you to note that. I lost a listing one time. I was happy to lose this listing because there were other issues as well in terms of the seller's disbelief. But this was, this was a $1.4 million listing years ago when there weren't too many $1.4 million listings and it was not on the water. So there were some issues. The house probably was worth 1.4 million. I'm sure that he had the receipts for 1.4 million. I should say that. And I lost the listing because I would not this is back when words were really important because photos weren't yet really important. He wanted me to lead the listing with the fact that he had a wolf um, range. And wolf is a great range. He had a 6 burner wolf range, and it was great. I mean, it was restaurant quality uh, stovetop, right? It was a gorgeous oven and range. But that's not how you begin the romance. You don't cue up the orchestra by saying, "Hey, before you start playing, I'd like to say a word about the refrigerator." And I pushed back on him, and he didn't like the way that I pushed back, and so he canceled the listing. And it's a funny story. Years later, I do remember walking away from him going, "What an idiot!" And in the 20 years since, I believe he's proven me correct. All right, the next question. Besides cash and no contingencies, is an escalation clause the only strategy left for a buyer in a bidding situation? I am so glad you asked that question. Escalation clauses are the dumbest thing you can do. There, I didn't pussyfoot around with that answer. Escalation clauses are the dumbest thing you can do. Because here's what happens in an escalation clause. The asking price is 1.2 million. I get escalation clauses that say there's two key components to an escalation clause. One is how much more you're willing to jump than the existing offer, and then what your line in the sand is. You won't go any higher than this. And by the way, when escalation clauses first came around, they're a very cute thing. HGTV has made my life a lot more complicated because they promote things that look really fun and really smart on TV because TV rolls at you and somehow suspends critical thinking in so many of us. So when you roll an escalation clause out, when it first came out, one of the first deals that I saw an escalation clause, there were 3 people. There was a bidding war, and as I recall, there were 8 or 9 bids. 3 of them had escalation clauses. 2 of them said that they would beat any other offer by $5,000. One said they'd beat any other offer by $2,000. None of the 3 of them had any endpoint. So I hate escalation clauses for it. I'll get into the legalities. Don't let me forget the legalities part of it. I hate them for all sorts of reasons. But in this case, I looked at these and I looked at all the other offers. And fortunately, one of the opening offers happened to be the highest offer. But now the escalation clauses kick in among the 3 competing. And I called a realtor that I liked, and she understands my humor. And I said, I've got good news and bad news for you. The good news is you won, your client won. The bad news is you won because the batteries in my calculator ran out at $2.35 billion. And so once the calculator died, I decided to end the bidding war. So if you can just have your buyer write a check for $2.35 billion, because there was no end point. So 5,000, another 5,000, 2,000, 5,000, 2,000, 5,000, 5,000, ad infinitum. That's stupid. But so now people understand that you specify the amount more than the other offer, and you specify here's as high as I will go. Here's how I mostly represent sellers. I do work with buyers, but I mostly represent sellers. Here's what happens when I get that. And again, I've told you about the transparency part to how any good realtor should run a listing past their seller. The asking price was 1.2 million. The offers come in. Let's say I've got 9 offers. 4 of them are escalation clauses because I can't get every realtor to behave like I want them to behave. And the escalation clauses. So 1.2, we got 9 offers. The highest offer on the table, asking price was 1.2. Highest offer on the table is 1.35. It is not one of the escalation clauses, but of the 4 escalation clauses, one of them ended at 1.3, so they're out. One ended at 1.35, so they're out because you can't go their contract can't go. One says 1.45 and one says 1.5. If you use an escalation clause, you are playing poker with your cards exposed. So I then go back to my seller and I say, well, we know this. There's a 1.45 and there's a 1.35. And the 1.45 says $20,000 more. So that makes the 1.35 1.37. You're just playing with your cards exposed. Now at 1.37, I am going to circle back to everybody who made an offer. And I include people dumb enough to write offers for less than the asking price because, okay, they're getting their cup of coffee, their wake up call. Let's include them in the next round of bidding if the wake up call is turn them on to, oh, here's the reality of what we're dealing with. So I go back to everybody and say, there's an offer on the table right now for 1.37. So tell us if you're going to beat it. If not, we're selling it for 1.37. And I can't say most of the time, but much of the time, the guy at 1.45, he's the guy who is on record at 1.37. He was going to go up to 1.45. He's on the record at 1.37. His realtor calls me, or somebody else's realtor calls me and says, "Hey, exactly where are you?" And all this. Like, well, we have an escalation clause up to 1.45. That will likely induce one of the other people who really wanted this, if it's a coveted property, to bid the 1.45, shutting out the. Actually, what will happen there is I encourage them to bid 1.475, enough above this guy's limit to the escalation clause. And by the way, I will then circle back and give the guy who said 1.45 is the size I'm going to go. I will give him a second chance or a third chance to reconsider where his line in the sand is. I know that there are people who are like, oh, that's wrong. No, it's not wrong. That's what a listing realtor is supposed to do. There's a difference between a listing realtor and a buyer's realtor. You have to understand that if the listing realtor is doing the best job they can for their client, this is how it's supposed to go. And you are supposed to reach out to everybody else. There are still some pretty high volume realtors who list properties and never pick up the phone to let people know about other offers that are on the table. It's wrong. It's unethical. There's a horrible little dirty secret in real estate. Hardly anybody sues, and suing is the only way to change behaviors in this particular business. Sellers want to sell their house. They don't want to sue the realtor. If they find their realtor lying to them, being unethical, they might fire that realtor, go get another realtor, but they're not going to go get an attorney and go into the courts and forget about selling the house and now focus on suing somebody. That's not what they're in it for. Buyers want to buy a house, same sort of thing. I've seen horrible representation on the buying side, and realtors doing stuff that not maliciously, not very often do I see malicious behavior. There are a couple of people who I do see malicious behavior from, but it's hardly ever malicious behavior. It's not knowing what they're doing. But buyers, they're here to buy a place. They're not here to sue somebody. They're not here to endlessly go to court or pay an attorney for something like that. And because of that, we're in an industry where it takes 5 days to get your license and a D- or better on the test. And it's all but criminal. All right, home warranty. Home warranty is a great idea. Instead of inspections, and I changed my mind on this about 4 years ago. You're a buyer and you really want to win that bidding war. If you offer, obviously price has a lot to do with it, but if you put in an offer with no inspections, oh my God, the sigh of relief from the seller is huge. Even sellers who have an immaculate house, who might pass any inspection with flying colors. When sellers get an offer in their hand, let's say you have a $1.4 million offer or a $1.45 million offer, so there's $50,000 difference. But the 1.4 million is a quick close and no inspections. There's a whole lot less time for anything to go off the rails. No inspections means whatever that earnest money is now in play because there is no inspection. There's no get to walk for free period. So I might advise the seller, and the 1.45 is based on financing, based on inspections, 45-day close. That 1.4 offer sure looks like a better offer because there are so many things that can go wrong in this. And if you let this person drag you out for a month and then they can't close, they have damage. You're never going to see 1.4 again. So So I would tell my clients in that situation, if it's clear that that's as high as both sides are going to go, you go back to the 1.4 and say, if you increase your earnest money to $100,000, we're inclined to take your deal despite the fact that we have a better deal on the table. Because the reality is, it is a better deal. At 100,000, you know you are locked in this deal. This deal is going nowhere. At the 1.45, contingent on financing and inspections, there's a whole lot of different things that could go wrong there. So, yeah, home warranties. And here's the other thing. If you get a bad inspection and the inspector somehow missed a $30,000 item and you go to court to sue them, here's what the court's going to give you. They're going to give you back the money for the inspection, 450, 500 bucks. That's all you're going to get. The $30,000 deal, $30,000 deficit that inspector caused for you, well, that's your bad luck. There's your caveat emptor, right? It just so happens that home warranties are almost exactly the same price as a home inspection. And I used to chuckle about home warranties and call it useless insurance. And then a client of mine got one in a deal because the seller offered a home warranty to put a buyer's fears at bay. And in the first 3 months of my client, the buyer, buying this house that came with a home warranty, the home warranty bought him a new furnace and repaired a roof. It was like $13,000. And that was probably 15 years ago. And that opened my eyes to, well, wait a minute, maybe I should rethink this. If you're a buyer and you you write into your offer no inspections, it is way more powerful than even you would imagine. On the selling side, when I put offers in front of my clients who are sellers and there are no inspections, oh my God, does that sweeten the deal. It is a huge, huge thing. So home warranty is a pretty good way to go to cover your bases as a buyer. I'm still stunned that the home warranty people hardly ever send somebody out to look at the house. They just take and I'll make certain you're dealing with a reputable home warranty. I mean, do your research and make certain you're dealing with somebody who will pay off. But yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks for the question, Jerry. Because of travel time into town, how much does it hurt the value of a house if it is located in Kingsley or Cedar, Michigan?
Ooh,
Yeah,
bad.
it's a good question. Both Kingsley and Cedar, when I was a kid growing up in this town, used to be a whole lot further away than they are now. I tell people all the time, when they built Tom's 14th Street location, I was a little kid when they built that, and everybody in town said, why would they build a food market all the way out there at 14th, which today feels like it's 2 blocks from downtown? So Cedar used to be way out in the sticks. In fact, most of my friends couldn't figure out how to get to Cedar. Kingsley, Kingsley was, I don't know, somewhere near Grand Rapids. Now they both are, just as they were in those days, 15 minutes from town. Does it hurt you? Well, you're asking, let me give you an extended answer about what you're really asking there. Cedar is gorgeous, quaint, has issues. It's called cedar because that's what grew there was cedars. And cedars grow in swampy areas, the low water tables. Cedar had a chance here about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. They had a chance to put a sewer system in Cedar. It just required a vote for the few hundred citizens of Cedar to be willing to foot the bill to put a sewer system in. Had they done that, Cedar would have expanded overnight because with the sewer system, because it's called Cedar and it's in a low water table area, there are problems getting adequate septic systems in. You put a sewer system in, that all goes away. Now you can expand the footprint of Cedar. It's good for the downtown businesses. It's good for growth. But here was the catch. And the older I get, the more I go, yeah, yay for the old people. The old people who love Cedar, who have lived there forever, said, why would we want that? First off, now I got to pay an extra $10,000 to have the sewer put in. It's probably more like $15,000 to have the sewer put in across my yard, but I got a perfectly good septic system as it is, so that this town can grow and get busier and noisier and more complicated than why would we want to do that? And I get it, totally understand. I think you do too when you hear it put that way. So Cedar has its limitations. Kingsley has a different sort of situation. Kingsley beautified their downtown. They did a streetscape project, and if you go down there, it's just a block and a half long. But you tell that they made the effort. There's a lot of building that's going on in Kingsley now. Kingsley is becoming, and you'll laugh when you hear this, but I'm correct about this. Kingsley is becoming a somewhat Tony bedroom community, Traverse City. And that was an absurd statement when I was a kid. Kingsley? Tony? There might be a kid there named Tony, but there's nothing Tony about Kingsley.
Oh,
Well, it's becoming that way. And it's that much closer to downstate. So, yes, there is yes, there is a discount for rural properties. It's been a long time. There have been three different moves to rural properties in this country's history. First one was when we were homesteading land, and people wanted big acreage parcels, and 85% of the people were self-sustaining farmers. That was life in the 1800s and into the early 1900s. Then there was a move there during the Depression. I can't believe I forgot that. During the Depression, people also wanted rural areas to get away from. There were a lot of issues that came with the Depression when you have 30% unemployment. Not only are you around poor people, but theft goes up, and there were a lot of different reasons why people wanted to again grow their own stuff. And then in the 70s, when hippies said farming looks like the life to me, until they found out that farming's a little tough and that your fields don't know a Sunday from a Tuesday and that you got to work 7 days a week. It has been since the 70s that there hasn't been a big move to rural areas since the 70s, 50 years ago now. Will there be a big move to rural areas? Yeah, my gut tells me that it's coming at some point, but no time soon. What people want now are walkable areas near the restaurants, near the shops, near the theaters, near the beaches. Um, I've lived where I live. I live right downtown. The parades began right out front of my house. When I moved here 30 years ago, I sat on the porch, I have a glass of wine, I have a cigar. If I saw somebody riding a bike, a couple riding a bike towards the center of town 30 years ago, it was noteworthy. It was like, oh, well, that's great. Somebody's riding in from a neighborhood further away from here to go have a drink or dinner. That was kind of charming. If I saw people walking down the street hand in hand, clearly doing the same sort of thing, that was charming 30 years ago. It still is charming, don't get me wrong, when I see it. But I now see it during the warm weather every 20 seconds. People are walking, people are biking, a whole lot more. People love that concept. So if you live in a rural area, you're not in a bikeable area. You're not in a walkable area. I mean, you could do it, but if you biked into town from Cedar, well, you'd tell everybody about it for the next 2 years. So people will love that. And real estate being pure supply and demand, yes, you can derive more money and you will have higher appreciation in the walkable areas. Great question.
good for Angie and Darren. Karen.
Yeah. Should you offer a home repair policy? It's a much you can offer a home warranty. I wouldn't say a home repair policy because it begs the question, well, what's wrong? And once you, by the way, it's much like talking function. Once you bring up anything that's wrong in the house, that's a step backwards. That's a pretty severe step backwards emotionally. Somebody who's either falling in love with the house or wanted to fall in love with the house. So you can offer a home warranty as part of the sale, and it does work its magic on the buyers where they go, hey, we're covered. It does, however, not too subtly beg the question, well, why? Why are you doing that? The better idea is get inspections done before you put your house on the market, address those issues, and then leave that evidence. Leave that. Don't put it right in the table front and center, because again, if you're going to leave it, people mostly would leave it on the kitchen counter, and the kitchen counter is going to be the second room that they encounter, and you don't want questions about the integrity of the house to come up at all on the first showing. But you can present, your realtor can present that as marketing once they fall in love with the house. So it's, yeah, I would think about offering a home warranty. Let's see. I believe we've answered all the questions there. Anybody else have any questions about what we're doing? If you unmute your audio, I see there are still 26 people here. And I'm willing to stick around a little bit longer. I never get tired of talking. So says my sweetheart. And my puppies. I wish the puppies were here. They're up at the Bel Air house. I wish I could show you those two adorable little things. If nobody has any other questions, nobody has any other questions, let's wrap it up for today. I think that I will do another one of these seller seminars in sometime in May, because there's so much to talk about. The outline that I had, I think we touched on about 40% of it. But I think we're all kind of tired of this at this point. Please keep Vic McCarty in your prayers. I'll just leave it at that. Keep him in your prayers. Wonderful legacy that he's left us with. The Tiger opener yesterday was incredible. 75 degrees and sunny in Detroit yesterday, which when I was driving home after the game, I got home late after the game. My sweetheart said, 75 degrees, it's 34 degrees and rainy here. And I said, it makes it sound like I saw a game in South America, not Southern Michigan. But that was fabulous. And summer is dead ahead of us. So coming into a sweet time. Always feel free to email me, jack@jacklaneteam.com. I respond to every email. When you're doing business with me, it actually is me. It's not, I don't pass it off to somebody else. So I'm not certain what the echo is coming from, but it's a great time to end this up. Stay warm. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter to everybody, and keep listening to the radio show. Thanks so much for attending today. See you later.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
You are most welcome.